She stood alone among men who thought strength had a gender. Rows of SEAL uniforms gleamed under the morning sun, but all eyes settled on the only black commander in sight. The Admiral's smirk wasn't curiosity. It was invitation for laughter. "Commander Carter," he said, loud enough for the wind to carry it, "you look sharp. Tell us your call sign." Everyone knew she didn't have one. That was the point. A ripple of chuckles spread through the ranks, boots shifting, pride thick as smoke. Then Rachel Carter looked up, voice calm, cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. "Iron Widow." The laughter stopped. The Admiral's smile cracked. His pen slipped from his hand, clattering on the asphalt. For the first time that morning, silence saluted her. The sun was merciless that morning, turning the parade ground into a mirror of heat and hierarchy. Dozens of operators stood in formation, faces carved from discipline. Rachel Carter was the only one who didn't look away when the Admiral approached. Admiral Hargrove walked with the lazy confidence of a man who'd never been questioned. His voice carried that smooth edge of authority that made insult sound like instruction. "Commander Carter," he said, pacing in front of her, "impressive resume. 14 confirmed operations, 3 commendations, 2 citations. You must be proud." He didn't pause for her answer. "Tell me something," he continued, circling her like she was a suspect, not a soldier. "Do you believe this program needs women?" The air tightened. Rachel's jaw flexed once. "I believe this program needs results, sir." A few muffled laughs broke the silence. Someone coughed to hide it. Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Confidence. I like that. But confidence can be dangerous in the wrong hands." He moved closer, the smell of coffee and authority mixing in the wind. "Let's be honest, Carter. You're here to prove a point. You think history's watching." Her voice was level, steady. "History always watches, sir. The question is, who writes it?" The Admiral blinked. Just once. That small hesitation, that heartbeat of a lost control, was worth more than any salute. He turned sharply, barking orders down the line, desperate to reclaim his rhythm. But the moment had already slipped. The operator sensed it too, the quiet fracture in the room's hierarchy. Rachel adjusted the cuff of her uniform. Every movement measured. Calm, composed, lethal in its precision. She didn't need to win this argument. She only needed to endure it. When the formation dispersed, Lieutenant Mills caught up beside her. He was looking for a reaction, he whispered. Rachel didn't slow her stride. Then he'll spend the rest of his career wondering why he didn't get one. She reached the end of the tarmac and looked out toward the ocean, the wind carrying faint echoes of helicopter blades. That sound always reminded her of the field, of missions where respect wasn't granted, only earned. Behind her, Hargrove watched from the window of the command building, his reflection merging with hers on the glass. His expression unreadable, but the tension unmistakable. "Iron Widow," he murmured, the name rolling off his tongue like a rumor he didn't yet believe. She turned slightly, as if she'd heard it through the glass. No words, no smirk, just that calm, deliberate posture that said everything the world needed to know. The hunt had already begun. The day after inspection, the base felt different. Quieter, heavier, as if the air itself remembered embarrassment. Word had spread fast. The Admiral's favorite demonstration piece had talked back. In a world built on hierarchy, silence was rebellion, and Rachel Carter's silence was the loudest sound on base. Men stopped talking when she entered the mess hall. Forks hit trays louder than usual. A few looked at her with curiosity, others with irritation. The kind of irritation that grows when power isn't obeyed, but endured. During the morning drill, the first mistake appeared. Her assigned drone didn't launch. The internal wiring had been tampered with, expertly, cleanly. Someone wanted to see if she'd snap, if she'd complain, if she'd show emotion. She didn't. Rachel calmly removed the drone's casing, rewired it mid-exercise, and rejoined formation as if nothing happened. 10 minutes later, her machine was the only one flying steady. Lieutenant Harris whistled under his breath. "You fixed that yourself?" Rachel didn't glance his way. Someone had to. At the command tower, Hargrove watched the feed on his monitor. His jaw flexed, the smile gone. He turned to his aide. "Push her limits. Next test, move it up." That night, Rachel sat alone in her quarters. The lights flickered once, then steadied. She knew better than to assume coincidence. There were no coincidences here, only tests. She unpinned her Trident badge from her sleeve, set it on the desk under the dim light. The metal glowed faintly, scratched at the edges. She ran her thumb along it, an old habit that grounded her. In her reflection on the window, she caught movement. 2 officers walking past, whispering, laughing softly. One voice, low but sharp. "Let's see how long the diversity hire lasts." The words didn't sting. They landed, tried to dig in, and slid right off her armor of control. Still, she wrote a single line in her notebook before turning off the light. "They think my silence is surrender. It's strategy." At 0400, her alarm went off. A folded envelope sat on her doorstep. No seal, no signature, just her name. Inside, Advanced Field Assessment, SO 500. Classified parameters. A smirk tugged at her lips. "Of course," she whispered. By the time the others were waking, Rachel was already at the hangar, gear on, boots laced tight. The base, floodlights cast long shadows against the fog. A crew chief handed her a file, avoiding eye contact. She opened it. No map, no details. Just coordinates and a single instruction. Lead. Survive. It wasn't a drill. It was a setup. Her team arrived late, confused. "We weren't briefed, Commander. Is this sanctioned?" She zipped her vest, eyes calm. "Everything's sanctioned until someone calls it out." They followed her wordlessly into the mist. The engines roared to life. Back in the control tower, Hargrove watched the screens flicker with static. "Send her into the deep run," he said. "Let's see how long confidence lasts under pressure." He leaned back, smiling faintly, but somewhere behind that grin, unease had already begun to bloom. Because deep down he'd seen that look in Carter's eyes before. Not fear, not arrogance, recognition. The fog was so thick it swallowed sound. Even the ocean, always loud at dawn, seemed afraid to speak. Rachel checked her compass under the red glow of her wrist light. No coordinates, no maps, only the words in that envelope. Lead. Survive. The chopper dropped them into the mist an hour before sunrise. 4 operators followed her, tense and uncertain. None of them had been briefed. None of them trusted the silence. "This isn't a sanctioned drill, is it?" one finally muttered. Rachel's reply was steady. "It's sanctioned by the people watching." They didn't ask who. The jungle swallowed them whole. Dew clung to their boots. Insects hummed under the static of distant comms. For the first 10 minutes, nothing went wrong. Then everything did. GPS went blind. Radios crackled with white noise. The lead tech whispered, "All systems jammed." Rachel's pulse didn't change. She scanned the horizon. Heat mirage flickers, wind direction wrong, humidity rising. Someone was controlling the terrain. This wasn't nature. This was orchestration. She raised her fist, signaling halt. The men froze. Then she took her knife, cut a strip of her map case, and laid it against the wind. The plastic trembled in one direction. "Stormfront east," she murmured. "Follow the current, not the compass." They obeyed. An hour later, her squad stumbled onto the checkpoint. 3 targets neutralized, 0 casualties. Every other unit was still lost in the fog. At the command tower, Hargrove leaned closer to the monitor. "Impossible," he muttered. "No visuals, no data, and she still found the course?" His aide shrugged. "Instinct, maybe?" Hargrove shook his head. Instinct doesn't decode jamming frequencies. In the field, Rachel crouched beside a shattered drone, one of the base's surveillance models. She traced its serial code with her gloved finger. It wasn't assigned to this test. Someone had slipped it in. Her voice was calm when she spoke into her dead radio, knowing someone was still listening. "Tell the Admiral his storm didn't last long. Enough." Static answered her. Then silence. By nightfall, her team reached Extraction Point Bravo, 3 hours ahead of schedule. Mud streaked her boots, uniform torn at the elbow, eyes sharp and unreadable. The flight back to base was wordless. Every operator who'd doubted her kept stealing glances. The kind of glances men reserve for the first person to rewrite a rule they didn't know existed. When they landed, Hargrove was waiting on the tarmac. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence between them was its own battle. Rachel removed her helmet, sweat glistening at her temples. "Mission complete, sir." He studied her face. "You enjoy proving people wrong, Commander." Her tone didn't change. "I enjoy proving the mission possible, sir." He didn't blink. "You had no right to override command frequencies." Rachel tilted her head slightly. "Then I suggest you check who authorized the override." Hargrove froze. His gaze flicked to the side, toward his aide, then back to her. She stepped past him, the faintest trace of a smirk ghosting her face. In his office later, he stared at the mission log. Every entry from Rachel's unit had been wiped clean. Only one note remained at the bottom of the file. "Classified, Ghost Protocol, Level 7 Clearance." Hargrove's hand trembled slightly. He'd heard those words before, but only in files that didn't officially exist. By the time Rachel reached the barracks, the storm had moved inland. Rain lashed against steel roofs, thunder rolling like distant artillery. Inside, she peeled off her gloves, mud still caked between the seams, proof of a mission that wasn't supposed to exist. Her comm device blinked red. Access revoked. She was locked out of the network. A low laugh escaped her lips. So, it begins. When she stepped into the hallway, the stares returned, heavier this time, sharpened by envy and fear. Men who had spent years climbing the ladder now whispered in corners because one woman had taken the elevator they didn't know was there. Lieutenant Mills caught up to her near the stairwell. "Commander, something's off. Command's saying you falsified your report." Rachel stopped mid-step. "Falsified? They're saying your team never left base." She smiled faintly. "Good, that means they're scared." Before Mills could respond, the alarms blared. Code red. Flashes of red light pulsed through the corridor. Over the PA, a voice barked orders. "Unauthorized detonation in Hangar C. All personnel secure positions." Rachel ran. Outside, smoke curled up from the hangar's far end. Flames licked through the rain, defying the weather itself. Operators scrambled with extinguishers, shouting over the chaos. The explosion hadn't been random. It was surgical. The hangar that burned was the one storing classified gear. Her gear. Mills reached her, coughing. "They're saying it was your drone, your tags on. The wreckage." Rachel crouched by a fragment of charred metal, her initials still visible through soot. RC. The perfect frame-up. "They're trying to erase me," she said softly. Mills grabbed her shoulder. "Then fight it. Go to command." She shook her head. "They don't erase soldiers. They erase ghosts." He blinked, not understanding. Rachel stood slowly, eyes locked on the burning hangar. Flames reflected in her pupils, steady as her pulse. "Tell them the Iron Widow doesn't burn," she whispered. Within the hour, she was summoned to the Admiral's office. Hargrove stood by the window, the rain painting streaks across the glass. His hands were behind his back, his tone carefully neutral. "Commander Carter, a detonation occurred in your assigned sector. Evidence places your unit's equipment at the epicenter." She didn't blink. "Convenient evidence, sir." His jaw tightened. "Are you accusing this command of sabotage?" "No," she said, stepping closer. "I'm accusing you of fear." The silence that followed was suffocating. The hum of the overhead lights sounded like gunfire in slow motion. Hargrove finally turned, face pale, eyes cold. "You're dismissed from active operations pending review." Rachel's gaze didn't waver. "Review all you want, but when you do, check who signed off my clearance." He frowned. "And who would that be?" She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Level 7, Ghost Command." For a heartbeat, he froze. The name alone was enough to make any admiral's blood run cold. She turned to leave, hand on the door frame. "One more thing, sir." He looked up. "If you're going to build a fire around me, at least make sure I'm not the match." The door shut behind her. Outside, the storm broke. Rain poured harder, as if the sky itself was trying to wash the lie away. But the base still burned beneath it. The suspension order arrived before dawn. A plain envelope slid under her door. No signature, no seal. Just 2 words typed in bold. "Stand down." Rachel didn't. By the time the rest of the base stirred awake, she was already walking across the tarmac, uniform pressed, boots polished, eyes sharp enough to slice through fog. The hangar still smelled of smoke. Charred wreckage covered in tarp, a crime scene staged too perfectly. She stopped beside it. "You tried to bury me," she murmured, "but you forgot I plant deep." A voice cut through the air. "Commander Carter, you shouldn't be here." It was Hargrove's aide, the same one who'd been whispering at every corner of her downfall. His tone had the weight of authority borrowed, not earned. Rachel didn't even look at him. "Tell the Admiral if he wants to erase me, he should at least do it to my face." The aide hesitated. Something in her voice, too calm, too certain, made him step back. Minutes later, she was escorted to the interrogation wing. No salute, no protocol, just suspicion. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the sound like electricity waiting for an excuse. Hargrove entered last, file in hand, mask of confidence cracking at the edges. "Commander," he began, "you've placed this entire base under review. Unauthorized maneuvers, destroyed equipment, compromised security. Tell me, what game are you playing?" Rachel folded her hands on the table, her expression unreadable. "The same game you started, sir. You just didn't expect me to know the rules." She slid a small metal chip across the table. Hargrove frowned. "What is this?" "Flight recorder from the drone that exploded. I retrieved it before the fire reached the engine." He stared at her. "That's impossible. Those drives melt in seconds." "Unless someone shielded it in advance." Her voice carried no pride, only precision. He inserted the chip into the monitor. The footage flickered. Thermal signatures, movement, unauthorized entry. 3 men planting devices. None of them her team. The Admiral's expression drained of color. "Who else has seen this?" Rachel leaned forward, eyes steady. "You, me, and the people above both of us." The room went still. "Ghost Command," she added quietly. "You remember that name, don't you?" The word hung like a detonator. Hargrove's aide swallowed hard. That program was terminated years ago." "No," she said. "It was buried, like everything that threatens comfort." Hargrove rubbed his temples, fury mixing with dread. "You're telling me you're still—" "I'm telling you," she interrupted softly, "that I was never yours to suspend." She stood. "And now this base is under audit, starting with your command chain." The door opened before he could reply. 2 uniformed officers entered, badges marked with the silver insignia of Ghost Command. "Commander Carter," one said, "you're requested for immediate debrief at the Capitol. Priority 1. Hargrove's voice cracked. "She's under investigation." "Not anymore," the officer said. "She's the investigator." Rachel glanced back once, just enough for the Admiral to see that faint, razor-thin smile again. "Respect's earned, Admiral," she said quietly. "You just lost yours." As she walked out, the storm outside broke into sunlight for the first time in days. The sound of helicopters filled the air again, not as a threat this time, but as escort. From the window, Hargrove watched her board. The wind tore across the field, scattering the ashes of what was once his power. For the first time, he understood the name that haunted the silence between her words. Iron Widow wasn't a call sign. It was a warning. The Capitol airfield shimmered under noon light, its horizon crowded with steel, flags, and silence. Rachel Carter stepped off the helicopter alone. No entourage, no ceremony, just a mission folder. It marked Classified Reactivation Order. Inside the command building, the air smelled of paper and power. A half-circle of admirals waited behind a polished table, expressions balanced between respect and disbelief. At the center sat Director Vance, Ghost Command's overseer, the only man senior to Hargrove. "Commander Carter," he said, voice like gravel smoothed by decades of command. "You understand why you're here?" Rachel nodded once. "To confirm what you already know, sir." He studied her for a long moment, eyes narrowing, as though measuring the weight of the storm she'd carried back. Then he tapped the file. "Your evidence checks out. Base compromised. Command negligence confirmed. You operated without clearance yet followed Ghost protocol to the letter." A pause. "You just exposed a rot 5 years deep." Murmurs around the table. Rachel didn't move. "What do you want, Commander?" Vance asked finally. She looked him in the eye. "The same thing I've always wanted. Integrity in the uniform." A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You've got it. You'll take over Tactical Division 7. Effective immediately." A younger admiral leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, her presence will unsettle command structure." Vance's tone didn't change. Then the structure needed unsettling. Rachel signed the document, initials clean, steady. When she stood, the light caught her trident badge, polished, unburned, undeniable. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of helicopter rotors, like the past saluting from a distance. She walked along the runway, jacket folded over her arm, watching the sunlight flash across the insignia stitched into its sleeve. Ghost Command. Mills approached from the arriving convoy, helmet tucked under his arm. "Heard the news," he said, breathless. "You're leading Division 7. Rachel nodded. "You in?" He grinned. "After what I just witnessed? Always." She looked back toward the horizon where the sky met the sea, the same sea that had once mirrored her isolation. Now it reflected command. "They'll still question you," Mills said quietly. She gave a faint, knowing smile. "Let them. Doubt's a weapon, too, if you know how to aim it." They walked in silence until the base siren wailed once, short, crisp, ceremonial, the sound reserved for new leadership. From the window of a distant office, Admiral Hargrove watched the salute play out across the tarmac, his career file already flagged for inquiry. He closed the blinds, muttering to himself, "Iron Widow. She was real." On the field below, Rachel Carter adjusted her collar and returned the salute of hundreds standing at attention. No speech, no grand gesture. Just that calm authority that had turned mockery into myth. "Respect's earned," she whispered. "Now let's make it mean something." The camera of the world pulled back. Alone, black. Commander framed against endless sky, her silhouette steady, sunlight igniting the trident on her chest. Because some storms don't destroy what they touch. They reveal what can't be burned. What would you have done if they laughed in your face and the world was listening?